There's a completely unknown Fortnite player who has been outplacing and destroying the best professional players in the world. This season, he's won an FNCS Divisional Cup, won his group in the FNCS semi-finals, made the entire country of France hate him, won 2 of the 6 solo cash cups, and almost won FNCS Grand Finals. Now, similar to some of the world's best players, he's even received some cheating accusations. This player's name is Demis. Now, Demis is a player who's been competing since 2020. However, he only got his first earnings back in January of 2023 with the introduction of the Solar Victory Cups. Now, in that format, all he had to do was qualify to the finals and then win a game and you'd win $100. Turns out that Demis is quite the solo player and he was able to win 12 Solo Victory Cup games and $1,200 before ever earning any team mode. Now, I had heard about how good Demis was, not because I'm a noticer, but because my friend Coach Harry is. Jump forward a few months after this conversation, and all of a sudden, Demis is at the top of every single leaderboard, and he seems to be a massive part of why so many French fans are sending death threats and hate mail towards any Polish player. You see, this year's FNCS Global Championship is held in Lyon in France. You see, for most of this season, Kami, Sei, and Hari, who are Polish players, have been fighting off spawn at Lost Lake against Akira, Exwiz, and Podesai, French players. Now, in order to make it to the FNCS Grand Finals, the biggest tournament of the season, you need to come in the top 10 in your group. However, these two teams were in different groups, which meant that they were both going to land at the same drop spot completely uncontested. Now, this means it's significantly easier for you to get into the top 10 of the leaderboards, meaning that it's going to be much easier for you to make it to Grand Finals. And if both of them are in different groups, this means it'll be much easier for both of them to qualify and get a top 10. The result of this is they'll both be contesting each other and fighting off spawn in Grand Finals, and more than likely won't do well in the one tournament where it really matters because they'll either die half of their games or have other teams rotate in and kill them. And that's where Demis comes in. See, this season he's playing with Pix and Darm, and they usually land at Pumped Power. Coincidentally, they were also in the same group as French team Akira, Exwiz, and Podesai. Now, Pumped Power was going to be contested by another team, so rather than fighting them there, Demis's team decided to land at Lost Lake contesting Akira, Exwiz, and Podesai. Now, many of the French fans were upset about this because they're clearly thinking that Kami, Sei, and Hari, another Polish team, have got their Polish friends to change drop spot to land on Akira, Exwiz, and Podesai to ensure they don't qualify to the Grand Finals to make things easier for Kami, Sei, and Hari. Whether or not this is true, we will never know, but what we do know is they absolutely bossed this lobby. Now, if you know anything about Polish players in Fortnite, they don't really have the best reputation for being the fraggiest of players. If anything, their reputation is usually being incredibly smart, being able to understand position, creating great strategies, rotating incredibly well, and are generally regarded as some of the smartest and most consistent Fortnite players of all time. But their fighting skill is nearly always their weakest link. For Demis, Pix, and Darm, this is not an issue. Their worst game in this tournament was a top 8, and they even managed to win the final game with 17 elims. Out of their 50 total elims in this tournament, Demis had 22 of these, having some insane major clutch ups. For example, in game number 2, where Pix ended up going down early, he was able to clutch up a top 2 with 7 elims. They won their group and qualified through to their first FNCS Grand Finals, whereas the contesting team of Akira, Podesai, and Exwiz, who they had been bossing off spawn, ended up in 28, not qualifying. Funnily enough, they did manage to then qualify through the last chance major by winning a game and contested Kami, Sei, and Hari, and as predicted, with both teams contesting each other, they both did badly. But Demis's trio with Pix and Darm did incredibly well. So what is it that makes him so good? If you watch any of Demis's gameplay, you'll immediately notice how incredibly good his movement is. Take this kill against an absolute NPC. Sorry NPC if you're watching this. Notice how after hitting a shot onto the other player, he swings around the right hand side and grabs a wall in front of him. He does not, however, just keep running straight into the other player's box. Instead, he edits a bottom right 4-tile edit and swings to the left a little bit to ensure he's hidden behind it. If you watch this from the other player's perspective, he is 100% hidden behind this edit, which allows him to hit a big shot. He then resets the edit and immediately starts sprinting round to the other side of the player. Since you can edit while sprinting, he edits that wall and slides into the box, making it incredibly hard for him to get hit, allowing him to easily finish off the other player who was just completely lost. When I was 1v1ing Veno for my previous video, he said that if he's in a box with another player, When he shoots his shotgun, rather than switching to his assault rifle, he'll sprint and slide to try and avoid being hit after that, and then go for another pump shot. It seems like more and more the best players are implementing sprint slides into their gameplay when you're in a 1 tile radius, and this completely makes sense. Because Fortnite has not the best servers and there's usually quite a lot of desync, the player who moves the fastest will usually have a good peeker's advantage. I will do a whole video on this eventually. So by sprint sliding, the opponent becomes visible to you way faster than you become visible to the opponent. So even where in this scenario he's sliding into a left-hand peek, he actually has the peeker's advantage because he's moving so fast. Plus, he's so low to the ground, it's just really difficult to hit him. Now, if you go back and watch that clutch where he ended up second with 7 eliminations from the FNCS group stages, you can see him do this mechanic all of the time in endgame. This mechanic can also be used just to slide straight into people's boxes, such as here where he gets the 29th elim out of these 31s, where if you time the wall bait correctly, you can just phase straight in because you're moving faster. But I think the coolest use of this is when Demis is getting W keyed here, and after getting hit, he turns, sprints, jumps, resets the wall, places a ramp, all whilst flying backwards. But because he has this sprint jump momentum that he's moving backwards, this actually allows him to slide down the ramp, spin around, and create another full box with a ramp inside, which in a matter of 1 second creates 3 layers between him and the other player who's trying to fight him. This gives him time to heal, and then of course he can just edit through all of these builds and then kills the player. But there's way more examples than just sprint sliding. Take this clip, for example, from the literal next elim, where he gets doubles over the other player. Now, most people jump down into the box, which is extremely risky, and since the other player drops back through his other wall, Demis actually has the awareness to walk along the other player's wall and crouch to try and get an angle. Unfortunately, he is not successful here and kills the player in another way, but this micro movement awareness, I genuinely don't think I've ever seen from any other player. Another trend I noticed with Demis is he's insanely good at getting doubles over other players. In this scenario, the other player boxes up, and Demis notices that he's only connected by 2 walls, so he just sprays these out to knock the other player down. Now, most people in this scenario, when that player is falling, they're going to try and take a shot and then grab a wall between him and the other player. But instead, what Demis does is he shoots a shot to get damage off and then immediately elevates himself up 1 layer. At this point, the other player is really busy trying to grab those walls that most people would take, which means Demis can freely grab the floor and the cone above the player. Then all he needs to do is double it down, a couple walls and a cone, and a pump shot to finish him off. And one of the reasons he can do this so easily is because he's a really good read on what other players are going to do. Take this scenario, for example, where Cringe here is getting lobby focused by a bunch of players. Now, most people would just try and smack on the wall behind him and take it, but instead he reads that Cringe is going to go down a layer, and by the time he does, Demis has already boxed that side up and is already pickaxing on that wall, giving the other players 0 time to react. And this elim's also just another great showcasing of his good movement fundamentals as he keeps swinging behind the peanut butter edit rather than just running into the box and trying to finish off Cringe quickly. And I think the best way to describe his fighting playstyle overall is just calm and patient. In this endgame, he kills 3 pros: Vico, Cammy, and Thomas HD. But the one onto Thomas HD is particularly interesting. He's in no way afraid to tank any storm here whatsoever, and despite the pressure of a 1v1 scenario and the ticking storm damage, he still takes the time to make sure he's making a good angle and taking a good right-hand peek. And this ultimately wins him the game. These things are also a positive feedback loop, where the more calm Demis is, the easier it is to read the opponents. And the easier it is to read the opponents, the less you have to panic, and therefore the calmer you can be. Ultimately, I think this positive feedback loop is one of the reasons why Demis is as good as he is. But interestingly, having good awareness on the other player is what has made some people to believe that Demis is cheating. In his 31 elim solo cash cup game, he manages to get an elim and then immediately turns around and full boxes up above another player, clearly knowing exactly where he is. He breaks through the floor, and this fellow Polish player lives up to the Polish reputation of not really being able to fight and just kind of jumps around the box and dies. Now, this TikTok seems to make it seem like this is one of the most suspicious things of all time. How did he know he was hiding in such a good hiding spot that could never be found? He's clearly using ESP to see through walls. Or he has the Void Boon, and he just got an elim, and you can literally see the effect leave the player's body as he gets eliminated and highlight the other player, making it the freest elim of all time. There's also a point later in this TikTok where this guy's like, how could he possibly see someone when he was in this cone? How would he ever know he's there? When he literally just saw the person in the cone as it was just building earlier. And then another clip after, he's like, how did he know this player was in this cone? But when Demis approaches the box, you can see him take his cone out and check the cones. If someone's inside of it, you'll see a lock symbol in the center of your screen. So Demis can clearly see that there's someone just sitting in this cone at this exact moment. Now, 200,000 people saw this TikTok and maybe think that Demis is cheating because of this, which is a real shame. And I'm not going to say he isn't, but I've seen zero clips that make it think that he is. And the more I watch him, the more I realize this guy's just booga. Now, obviously, dropping a 31 bomb against Opens level players in the first game of a solo cash cup is still impressive, but I think the most impressive thing about Demis when he fights in trios with Pix and Darm is the strategies that they come up with to fight other top level pro teams. In the FNCS semi-finals, as we already mentioned, they were contesting the French team of Akira, Podesai, and Exuis. And in this particular game, they were playing this fight defensively, whereas the French team were the ones aggressing them. As soon as this fight commences, all three of them immediately crouch at the exact same time almost, making it really difficult for the French team to figure out exactly where they are and which angles they should take. After a couple of back and forwards, Demis and Darm make an amazing play where they bait the other team. They tarp over to the other building whilst Pix is still crouching down below. The French team now thinks they've all rotated over, which allows Pix to sneak up on top and beam X-Squeeze. He drops down and falls straight into Darm, who wipes him out. This now becomes a 3v2, and Demis is able to get the elim on both of the other two players. So this was a great bait and switch, which allowed Pix to get behind the team. In another game, they did a really nice setup where Darm went on top of the main building, Pix ramped up on the right side to make sure they couldn't escape, and Demis was on the south, which basically forced Podesai, X-Squeeze, and Akira to either rotate to the north or just fight them. And since they were trapped inside the building, this actually allowed Demis just to spend a ton of time looting and get a good mat advantage. They then baited that they left the fight by all teleporting south, but then immediately teleported back up north and created a beautiful pinch where Demis was flanking around the left and Pix and Darm were on the right hand side, completely sandwiching Akira and X-Squeeze together into the middle, which allowed them to jump in and just finish the fight. Unfortunately, this footage is really laggy. Thank you, replay mode. As I've been recording this video, FNCS Grand Finals has been going on, and they've been actually contending for first place. Unfortunately, they weren't able to win because this video would have been too cinema, but Demis, Pix, and Darm were absolutely popping off and were really impressive for a first-time Grands team. It'll be interesting to see their progression across the entire year. Now, in this video, I covered a lot about how Demis has had some cheating accusations, which I think don't hold any weight, but way more people have accused Peterbot of cheating, and you can see my full analysis of how Peterbot beat the allegations by clicking on this video right